Thank you, Salma. So let's get started and get into it since we have a set amount of time for us to complete this webinar. Welcome. This is a webinar on post-secondary career expectations, an overview of it. So if you're not familiar with it, my name is Olivia Sanchez. I'm part of the professional development team. Before we begin, this session is being recorded, as you heard. And if you're having trouble connecting with the audio through your computer, you can use the call me option for the audio. You could also use the Q&A feature for questions. There will be continuing education and professional development hours that are going to be offered. So wait until the end for you to get the information with regards to completing that information so that we could get that and get the proper credits out to you. If you are interested in getting information of any upcoming webinars, please visit our website at isac.org. So let's get into it since our time is very strict. For those of you that are new to ISAC, ISAC is the agency that whose mission is to provide Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. We administer scholarships and grants to students across the state of Illinois, and the specific team that I'm a part of is the one that does the offerings to navigate the financial aid process, resources, support for underrepresented students, and understanding on the student loan repayment and forgiveness programs. This is our agenda for today. We're going to go over some of the background information in regards to PaCE and some of the legislation. We're going to get it started with what PaCE is and go through some of the thought process that comes up with regards to implementing PaCE. And then the implementation process, how do we kind of roll that out within our school districts or our schools in particular, and then any additional resources and support that may be available to you. So let's get into the background and the legislation. So way back in 2016, in May of 2016, the Illinois House and Senate unanimously passed the Postsecondary and Workforce Readiness Act, known as the PWR Act. And what this legislation did, it was a partner with 4 different education agencies to develop and establish a system to ensure that high school students were ready for college and a career path. And so the 4 entities that are tied to this, aside from us at the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, it is also the Illinois State Board of Education, or ISB, the Illinois Community College Board, or ICCB, and the Illinois Board of Higher Education, or IBHE. And so there were deadlines, meetings to kind of figure out what were some of the benchmarks and the things that needed to be kind of rolled out with this legislation. And initially the PaCE framework was to start from 8th grade through high school through 12th grade. But in May of 2022, through the Public Act 1020917, that was revised, and that was kind of changed to be to implement and include some of the lower grades. So the 4 entities are still the same ones, but now the PaCE framework, as of now, as it stands, through the PWR Act, is starting at 6th grade and working through 12th grade, and we're going to get into what those specific things are that tie into the PaCE framework. So some of the components from the PWR Act were a number of different things, and this is why a number of different agencies are involved. So we at the Illinois Student Assistance Commission are the ones that disseminate information and training around the Post-Secondary and Career Expectations, or PaCE framework, which is basically where schools or districts kind of have a visibility as to what their plans are for implementing this, what their chosen benchmarks are. And so they kind of roll that out. But there are other components through this act. There is the career and the college and career endorsements, the CCPEs, that some of the high schools are looking to implement and tie into some experience with students before they graduate from high school. There's a transitional instruction, which is the collective between getting some transitional English and transitional math classes available to high school students while they're in high school, so they have some leg up with regards to those classes as they decide to graduate and then move on to a college or university, and then the competency-based education pilots. And so with regards to the competency-based education pilot, that is a component that is modeled and allowed for experiential learning experiences, both inside and outside of the classroom. And this is overseen by ISB. Most of these benchmarks are also overseen by ISB with regards to tracking. But we're the ones that are disseminating and doing the training with regards to PaCE. So let's do a quick crosswalk. This crosswalk identifies the benchmarks on the Illinois PaCE framework that meet and support the college and career readiness indicators. The chart highlights some of the benchmarks that meet and support those CCPEs, the college and career pathways endorsements. So they don't articulate them, but they link them so that you know that if you're doing the CCPEs within the framework, then you're aligning yourself with regards to the PWR Act. So this is what the graphic kind of shows with regards to some of the, what you're meeting and exceeding and supporting for the students. We'll get into the specifics with regards to language. As I mentioned briefly in the overview, the Public Act 102-0917, this builds upon what was already started with the PWR Act, and it focused on the two main components, the Illinois PaCE framework and the college and career pathway endorsements that some school districts and schools are already looking to implement. Some are a little bit more ahead of others, but it is something that most schools are already looking into. This amended certain sections of the Illinois Code, specifically for some of the public high schools and with regards to CPS being one of the systems within this area. So the Public Act 102-0917, and most of this is just an overview because it is something that has already been completed. It was within that PWR Act 102-0917 that the four entities were to appropriate stakeholders to adopt and publicize the updates, expanding the framework to the 6th grade, which was done. So when this was rolled out, within ISAC, we looked into bringing down the information so that the benchmarks and those things within the framework were identified starting at 6th grade and not the 8th grade that it originally was. And then by July 1st of last year, the ISB was to publish and make current a database by region and by employer champions for the work-based learning and career readiness programs, which is done. So that is something that can be found in the ISB website. And there is an inventory for that, and there's a link on the bottom of this slide, and if you're interested in taking a look at that as well. The other part that was adopted for the Chicago Public Schools, which made the change, was that CPS had to adopt these changes from 6th through 12th grade and align it by no later than July 1st of 2024. And so CPS's framework should be available in a prominent location within the district's website, which is also the mandate for other schools, that once they have the framework that it is visible on their website. But Chicago Public Schools is the first one to kind of roll that out. And then no later than July of this year, the adopting and implementing of the PaCE within districts that are outside of Chicago Public Schools. So they're to adopt and commence implementation of career exploration and career development activities that are in accordance with the PaCE framework starting at 6th grade and working through 12th grade. What we've seen in some of the meetings that we've had in some of the districts outside of the Chicago Cook area and suburban and outside of the metro area of Illinois is that some of the districts are meeting with their middle school, elementary schools and implementing this framework. And so they're aligning their meeting to have those discussions, and we'll get into specifics around that. But the school district framework has to make sure that they post in a prominent location in their district their framework, so that should there be changes with administration, with the principal, with the counselors, the teachers, there's a document that articulates what these benchmarks are, and is a framework so that whoever comes in can make changes if the student population changed, the needs of the student population changed, or if there's new things that they may want to incorporate. And so that document is there so that it is visible and accessible and doesn't collect dust somewhere where nobody has access to it, and they can end up modifying and changing, reevaluating some of these benchmarks so that they are relevant to their student population. The school district, other than CPS, will serve grades 9 through 12 and have elected to implement the CCPEs, or must have opted out of the implementation. So there is an opt-out, and we'll get into specifics around that. If you want more information in regards to the legislation, there is a link on the bottom part of this slide as well as an additional resource. And so more things with regards to the changes from the Public Act 1020917, which are the offerings of college and career post-secondary endorsements. And that is for Chicago Public Schools. So within Chicago Public Schools, they have to roll out any of these implementations of any endorsements that they have for the class of 2026 by offering at least one endorsement area, and then expand on that in the following years, or a couple years later into 2028, for at least two endorsement areas. And then as the years go into 2030, which is in 5 years, they'll have at least 3 endorsements in the area if the district has enrollment of more than 350 students. And then school districts and other other than within the Chicago Public School area or the system must roll it out in the odd years within that time frame. So CPS will roll it out first in 2026, and then other districts have until starting in 2027 to at least have one endorsement area. And then in 2029, there would be 2 endorsement areas for school districts outside of the Chicago Public School System. And then by 2031, which would be in 6 years, they would have at least 3 endorsement areas, again, with the same parameters around the enrollment of more than 350 students during the 2023-2024 school year. And then more information with regards to that legislation is also available on the bottom part of this slide as well. So opting out, as I briefly mentioned that in the previous slide, so a school board may opt out of the implementation of all or part of the requirements by considering the following: that the school district's current system or current college and career readiness, so that they may have that. The school districts, the cost for implementing balance. Some of the school districts are a little bit smaller, and so the balance with regards to implementing and bringing in some of the additional resources may not be within the budget. And so again, assessing that balance against the potential benefits for the students, the willingness and capacity for any local businesses. We know that across the state, not everything is as densely populated as it is within the Chicago metro area, but there may be other or scarce resources within other districts or other areas. And so there may not be other partners or business partners to bring in. And so it's assessing those things within the districts for partners and making sure that there are successful implementations for those pathways and availability for some of the dual credits that are taking place with regards to some of the college districts, as well as the tie-in with some of the high schools as well. The availability of statewide database for participating with local business partners for the purpose of career readiness and accessibility for these partners within the school district, and the availability for teachers meeting the faculty credential standards for those dual credits. That has been an issue with some of the dual credits, that some of the teachers don't have the credentialing for running some of the classes for, even if they're at the high school area and the high school facility itself, within that their own system, to be able to do those dual credits for students for that transitional math and English class. And so those are the things that a district may assess and figure that there isn't something that they are within their budget. There's restrictions, accessibility to external partners and things, and so they may decide to opt out and full or in part based on that assessment. But the school district must report its board findings and decisions to ISB once they assess that decision. So the House Resolution 681 celebrates college and career readiness, and this is how this resolution kind of breaks down the parts and who does what within some of those 4 components of the PWR Act. So ISAC, we publish an annual report documenting recognizing the leadership in districts to implement the PaCE framework. ISB publishes an annual report documenting and recognizing the leadership for eligible districts and implementing the CCPEs. And then the other part they also do is encourage districts serving 9th through 12th graders or high school students to implement the CCPEs in multiple areas in collaboration with their post-secondary and workforce partners. And so both ISAC and ISB encourage all districts serving grades A through 12 to implement their own framework, encourage districts to extend that framework to serve some of the younger grades. I know that some of the school districts have a little bit of a harder time kind of pushing that down, but there's a lot that are also making strides with regards to that. And we'll get into the resources so that you don't feel disparaged with regards to kind of rolling it out within your area. This is a map that kind of just shows some of the broader ranges within the framework across the state. We do keep a repository on our website of some of the resources that are available to be able to share. So if you are looking to implement PaCE and not sure where to begin, want to look at what areas in your area of the state are rolling what out, and you want to have some idea as to what may work for your student body population, you can look into the repository at isac.org/PaCE and look in to see that framework and see what other districts have done. There is one school district, if I remember correctly, that has stuff that I've seen starting in 2nd grade. It isn't something that's part of the PWR Act or within PaCE, but some schools are, eager to implement this and kind of implement it across other grades, even if it's not a kind of mandate with regards to the Act. So the purpose of the framework, it serves as a tool or a guide for college and career readiness efforts. It basically allows for a school to create a hub or an organized framework to keep things together as to what they're doing. So it's not something that the English department is doing that isn't communicating with the counseling department or with other parts with other teachers or areas within the school. It's where everybody kind of comes together, decides what goes into what, who's doing what part, and the framework is the, kind of the finished product that's all kind of put together. This framework also provides the sustainability. As I mentioned, it enables college career readiness efforts to be replicated year to year, because if you have this document, you can assess what's worked within your district from year to year, what things need to be changed, maybe added or deleted or modified. It allows for accountability. It allows for staff and everyone to understand what those college and career readiness expectations are at each of the different grades. And it allows for also flexibility. It can be adjusted to meet the needs of the student population. And then it can be escalated up depending on that need. And so if the student body population changes and there's things that need to be done, maybe it shrinks, maybe it increases, there's different dynamics. Those are things that can be assessed and then changed and kind of tested as you start to roll out. If you're already doing something that's tied to one of the benchmarks, but you want to expand it, you could do that. But it's really up to the district to be able to take those kind of pulses from the district and from the student body to be able to implement and roll out. This is a slide that kind of just shows what the benchmarks are for, or some of the ideas for what the expectations are from 6th through 8th grade. Originally, when this was first rolled out, it was all one document starting 8th grade and working through 12th. Now it's 2 separate documents from 6th through 8th and then 9th through 12. And then there's the dominant domains within aspiration, self-efficacy, and planning for students. That gives an idea as to what should be a student should be exposed to, and then what a student could be supported to do or participate in before they get into high school. So this framework, again, the component, this was rolled out in July of 2023 from the request to change it and bring down the grade. And again, the students should be exposed to using or understanding certain concepts, and the students should be supported to, which means that there are specific kind of action items or experiences that the students can be exposed to. One of the big ones that I think is common around a lot of the middle schools that we've come across is that by 8th grade, a lot of the students are exposed to career exploration or some kind of career fair prior to going to high school, so that they have an idea both as to what course of study that they may want to be going into, what classes they can take that align with that once they get into high school, as they prepare for setting the, the benchmark or the lay down the groundwork for some of the classes that they may want to take that align with a college or a specific degree or certificate. And so that's kind of one of the universal things that I think I've seen across the board with elementary schools, that the students have been exposed to some of that within some of the areas. And then this is the framework for 9th through 12th grade. As you can see, there's specific domains around career exploration and development, financial aid and literacy, post-secondary education, exploration, preparation, and selection. And so they're all aligned. These aren't things that can be, this benchmark can be rolled out and implemented as is, or you could modify it, make it customized for, again, your student population to assess. And so it's not about doing everything, it's about doing what your students need and making sure that you take inventory of what it is and what resources you have available, and making sure that those two things align to be able to provide those resources. And then document it all and have it centralized, so that should, as I mentioned before, new administration take place, whoever comes in already knows what's being done and has access to all this material. And then it's just a quick evaluation and assessing if it needs to continue to be done. So as I mentioned, from 9th through 12th grade, those domains are in the lower right-hand side of this slide. A student should be supported to, and these are again action items or experience a student should know, is understanding key concepts. And then the student should have completion or a time-sensitive task. As students get into high school, one of the mandates within the state is for students to complete a financial aid application, which is typically assigned at the benchmark for grades 12, that by the time that they graduate, they would have completed their financial aid application. And so those are, again, time sensitive, but there are also concepts that can be worded in and worked through starting in 9th grade around financial literacy, around creating resumes and other things that align with, aligning the student with what their career paths are. And so it kind of implements some of those different concepts of students learning and then implementing and rolling out some of the experience so that they have it through some of the other benchmarks that are part of the PWR Act. And so it's just adequately documenting it within this framework. And so when a school starts with this framework, the first step is to decide whether to adopt the Illinois PaCE framework or to develop a customized one, as I've mentioned. On the screen, you have the Illinois PaCE framework, and the customized is a PDF. And so it's blank for you to figure out what it is that you want to do, which benchmarks you want to align, and you want to basically incorporate and implement within the work that the school is going to be doing. Okay, I thought I skipped a slide. So adopting the Illinois PaCE framework, you want to review the benchmarks within the Illinois framework and consider the administration, what support and what approval is needed from the administration, any available resources, not just in the school, but in the surrounding area, any benchmarks that align with those college and career readiness indicators, and then the needs of the student and the needs of the student population, any partnerships within the community, and then any potential costs. Maybe tracking all of this requires a specific software that has a specific dollar amount. And so you want to look into what those costs are, or if there's something that's already available that can be worked around, that is already available, like an Excel spreadsheet, or maybe you already have something to track things. So it's just a matter of adding a couple other components to that tracking system that you already have. So it's kind of assessing that, but then who needs to be at the table to make those assessments and have those types of discussions, other things that you want to be able to consider as well. Developing and the customized framework. So you want to review those benchmarks with the Illinois PaCE framework and then consider, again, addressing those readiness indicators, the availability of resources. If you need to get approval from anyone, if from the superintendent or from the principal or from who within the area. And then again, who needs to be involved in this framework is also very important. Who's going to be implementing some of those benchmarks? If there's going to be mock interviews, if there's going to be a career fair, who's going to put it together? Who's going to be responsible for it? Who's good at that? What businesses do you want to bring in to be a part of it, and things like that? What colleges do you want to be incorporating into that? So the school districts can request a PaCE framework development workshop or a customized PaCE framework on their own by reaching out to us. But again, you can assess this. You could do it on your own, but it's completely up to you if you want us to be able to help you with that. So establishing that framework development team, as I kind of alluded to in the presentation, like who's at the table, what permissions do you need? It's only necessary if you want to customize it. If you don't want to customize the framework, then you don't, but the consensus should be reached among the team as to which of the benchmarks you want to include in the framework. And then what grades at what benchmark should be assigned. As I mentioned, the financial aid completion, the financial aid application completion is something that the students in 12th grade would do. So that would be specific to that grade. There may be other things that you want to incorporate prior to that, that may start at 9th grade, or may include some of the middle school students, because that's how the district kind of runs. So these are things that would be unique to the school district, the area, and the resources that are available within that area. And then you want to assess the potential members to include, but not limit yourself to just what's on this list. These are just merely suggestions. The counseling staff, the principal, administration, any curriculum directors, the principal, the superintendents, teachers across the board, not just English teachers, but maybe the science teacher, middle or junior high school. Again, you want to incorporate as many people as possible. It would be required for a consensus to take place, but it is worth going through and including everybody that may be potentially working with the students to implement some of these benchmarks. So the PaCE implementation process, let's get into what that is. So you want to establish an implementation team. The implementation requires collaboration across a wide range of professionals within the school, the district and community. As I keep repeating, it is very important. It's not just something that one person or teacher or 2 or 3 people do. There's a number of different resources that may be available within your school and the surrounding area from community-based organizations or other community partners that may be involved. So you want to collaboratively assess and address those implementations and align them with the framework. There may be unique needs by the student population. I know within the Chicago area, there's been an influx of students that have come in from other countries. And so in some school areas or schools, language was not an issue, but now it's an issue because now the students don't speak the language, and so they need bilingual teachers. And so these are the changes that only you would know within your area, what that may be kind of rolling out. But again, to be mindful of what additional resources you need that maybe you don't have. And then all available school district or community resources should be identified and considered. So this includes some of the business owners and the businesses within the area, because there may be some college endorsements or work-based learning things that may be available to work with those business owners and implement as you're doing things outside of PaCE, but within the PWR Act. Students are exposed to college and career readiness concepts, so language, career fairs and other things, putting together resumes and language around, soft skills or transitional skills or whatever verbiage is used to incorporate things that a student should know as they start to prepare for and think more long-term through their trajectory of not just completing elementary school or in high school, but aligning some of the coursework with what they plan to study. So again, it's incorporating a number of different things. Potential implementation team members. Again, the effectiveness of this implementation team depends on the team that is involved. As mentioned, potential people may be included but not limited to the counseling staff, the teachers from both middle school and junior high and high school, but also community colleges or community college partners for your colleges or institutions or university partners, including ISAC core members. There are ISAC core members assigned to the different areas within the state. This is an additional free resource that is also available. They could do financial aid workshops in addition to what may be done during the school day, and so this is an additional resource that's available to everyone. Local business partners, again, identifying some of those business partners for some of the endorsements that the student may have. And so it's basically aligning everything within this implementation to have it centralized for everyone within the area, district, parents to be able to see and assess. And so the three-step process that we kind of use to simplify this is taking inventory, as I've reiterated, prioritizing those gaps and needs within the students, and then an action plan to kind of roll out what it is that you want to do within your area as you start to implement and identify these things. And this is something that is obviously done at the beginning, but it's something that can be done as you continue to roll out this PaCE framework from year to year. If you want to take that inventory again, maybe there's a new business that just opened, or there's a new technology or new something that is in the area, or something that's going away, and so you want to, you know, it may be an education training or something that you implemented and now it's, you know, a business closed or an industry is no longer valid, and so you want to take that information. But as you take inventory, you want to assess what is currently done within your school district and to meet that benchmark. If it is, again, customized, you want to identify the areas of strength and the areas of need for additional support and additional resources. And then when you're taking inventory, you want to consider which benchmarks are currently being met. A lot of the schools are already doing things within the area. They just don't have a centralized place to have it. And this is what this benchmark does. This one document centralizes everything within one area so that you all have access to it. And so it's just a matter of kind of putting it together. And so that's what the implementation meetings are for. One teacher may be doing something already, or one school may be doing something, and there's multiple schools within the district. And so it's just a matter of kind of sharing that information out. And so that's why it's important to meet and discuss what is being done and taking inventory of that so that you can adequately document how well and how effective are those benches being met. If it's something that you started to roll out but you're not very proficient in or don't do it consistently, maybe you want to, as you document it and have it in one centralized place, try out different days and times and roll it out and see what works best so that you are successful with that particular benchmark. And then which benchmarks are not currently being met. That maybe you want to work on, that you see that students need within your area, and so you want to make sure that you modify whatever is wrong with it in order for it to meet the needs of the students. And these are examples of some of the worksheets that are created to take inventory. So you start with the different grades and you start rolling out through the different grades so that you have identified what a student is supposed to do and what students should know within your school district. And then the second step is prioritizing your gaps. So you want to prioritize how to fill in the gaps after the first step. So you want to, for each of the benchmarks, you want to document any activities that are currently being done to meet that benchmark, and then brainstorm as to what potential activities to improve or expand that are currently being done. As I said, there may be 2 or 3 schools within a district, and one school has organized things well, the other one is slowly implementing things, but if they come together and have those discussions, they could create something that is uniformly across, and the strengths from one of the school can help implement and roll out things to the other schools that maybe don't have that accessible. So it's not really about creating a new wheel and implementing things. There may be things that are already done. It's just centralizing it all. But it is a lot of communication and making sure that, again, the students are at the heart of it. So this is an example of prioritizing the gaps worksheet. So on here, the English assignment is given within the spring, and this is something that the English teacher in junior year does for her students and regular students and AP students. And then there's also students that complete a cluster within freshman year within the English departments as well. So there, again, there may be things that are being done, but there's no activities, or maybe there isn't a current activity that's being done with it. And so we need to document it because there is something that's already being done, but it's not tied in completely together. And for examples of these materials, there is a link on the bottom part of this slide to show you where you have access to viewing it. And then the last step, as I mentioned, is the action plan. So these are plans that would, for rolling out or implementing any current or potential activities that are involved within each of the benchmarks. So you want to identify the who, where, what, when, and how to be involved within the implementation process. And so you want to solidify these logistics that are involved in the implementation. You want to ensure that the activities are agreed upon from the previous step as you're rolling out these action plans. And so that you have an example of what that looks like, this is action plan worksheet. So the who, what, when, and where, and then the action plan is. So as I had mentioned in the example on the worksheet, that the juniors in the English departments, as well as juniors in the AP class within the English departments, have scheduled lessons within the spring in March and April. And the lessons are held for students in English class. So the English teacher is the one that kind of rolls this piece out. The action items, they want to make sure that the students have their laptop and access to Illinois WorkNet for creating their resume and their personal statement with regards to kind of rolling out. There may have been a discussion around, you know, how do you create a resume and things like that. And so that is the benchmark. And then the other one that was the example was that students attend a career cluster survey. And so the English department here is also the one that kind of brings in freshmen so they could start having those discussions and maybe complete some kind of an assessment around what a career cluster is, and have discussions around defining what those are and looking at the different components of it. And so that is something that is done. On here, it's once, but again, every school district is going to have it in different ways. They may be 2 or 3 that are done, or it may be done in 10th grade as opposed to 9th grade. So again, this is going to vary depending on the student population and the resources that the school district has, as well as what the needs are, primarily the needs of the students are. So some resources and support options that are available for you. I know we're getting close to time. So we do have a website. There are materials and resources that are there to support and any PaCE framework that you may be interested in implementing. Again, those customized frameworks, the repository is there. So if you want to look at other districts within your area and other places within the state, you may want to kind of borrow from to implement within your area. Descriptions of that PaCE support options, implementation worksheets, if you want some blank ones so that you could start customizing yours, or you could just borrow the one that we have that is already there. And then any information with regards to trainings and whether in person or virtually, you want to make sure that you check the website for that particular information. And then there is a request email. So again, within the request email, you could offer in-person. We offered in-person and virtual support options for schools and districts to learn and understand this implementation. So there is the PaCE overview, which is this one, and then the implementation support meetings that are available to roll out and take inventory and assess what school districts. So is something that we can do for the schools and the districts. The email request can be sent to isaac.outreachtraining.gov. And then again, you want to include the topic, the time, and the date and location for the event so that we can schedule something for a follow-up within your district or within your school. The PaCE implementation support, this is a series of 3 one-hour meetings with ISAC and the school district and the implementation team. Again, the implementation team depends on what your resources are within your school and area. We work with the implementation team to understand and complete the take inventory, the prioritizing the gaps and the action plan worksheets, so that there is a plan that is kind of rolled out and accessible for that school or district. And then upon the completion of the meetings, the school or district implementation team will be equipped with the implementation framework, whether that's the PaCE framework itself as it is or a customized one. And then we do have a curriculum training coming up. This is basically an overview that walks attendees through the Illinois PaCE curriculum, starting, and this is just for middle school, 6th through 8th grade. To access this curriculum, you have to attend the in-person half-day training, which is coming up on Thursday, February 20th from 8 a.m. to noon, and it will be held at Lincoln Light Community College in Springfield. Registration is currently open, so if you do want to register for it, you can. And for more information about these workshops, you can go to the link at the bottom part of this slide so that you can access that information to register. And then there's the PaCE module training. This training discusses how to get started with PaCE and some of the best practices for implementation, and the next steps that are successful in adopting and implementing the PaCE framework. The 4 modules are on starting with a good plan. So again, taking that inventory and rolling things out, it takes a community which takes into account, again, what your resources outside of the school are, and within the community, within what business partners or community-based organizations and other resources are available within that particular area for your school, and then centering the students, as I've kind of reiterated. The PaCE framework is for the students. It's student-centered to make sure that the resources that are available, the things that are implemented, the benchmarks align with what the students need to make them successfully transition from high school to college, to a certificate class, to a community college, or a 4-year institution, and have some ideas to what their options are for studying and moving on past high school. And then tracking your progress. This is more data specific, making sure that you're tracking what you're doing in your area, and kind of assessing and keeping an ear out for what changes may be coming in or happening with your student population that you need to be mindful of, so that you're not leaving anybody out in the process. And then another resource that we have that recently became available also is the PaCE and the GAP Access, or the Gift Assistance Program. You can follow information and upload information in regards to that. So you can go to the top left-hand side on the school, edit the school information, and then on the center right side, put in, the Illinois PaCE framework, or if it's a customized one, and then hit save. If you don't hit save, it's not going to save the changes. So you want to make sure that you hit save as you identify that within your school. And then the Illinois PaCE student checklist. This aligns with the benchmarks for high school, the high school PaCE framework. It is very simply, the verbiage is very youth or student friendly. It can be used for students as a guide for them to walk them through the college and career planning process. Again, this is in high school, so 9th through 12th grade, and each of the grades includes action items for career, money, and college, so that students know what things that they might be mindful or things to consider. And then the Illinois Career Pathways Dictionary. This was published in 2018, and it was recently redone online. So there is, it does provide definitions that foster alignment with regards to the different agencies. So there isn't one agency calling one thing something different. There is a uniform, verbiage around what we're talking about with regards to pathways and things like that. So there is a dictionary for all of that. And then the PaCE implementation guide. This provides extensive guidance on adopting and implementing the PaCE framework. There's components in the guide that build upon understanding, building relationships with stakeholders. Again, stakeholders would be some of your businesses, some of the assets or resources within your area that include hospitals, community-based organizations, and other things, depending on what it is that your students need, developing a plan for implementation, executing the implementation plan, and some of the best practices on how to build a team of stakeholders within your area. And then there is a newsletter that is available that is the PWR Act newsletter that is it provides information on some of the latest resources from the Act, and the newsletter comes out every so often. I want to say it's every quarter. But this is information that brings together the information from PaCE, from the competency-based learning system, the transitional instruction, which is the math and English, and then the college and career post-secondary endorsement pieces that are part, again, not just through ISAC, but through ISB, ICCB, and Illinois Board of Higher Education, so that it's all one compiled assessment on what those changes are across the board, not just through PaCE. And then for those of you that have stuck this long, it's 11:45. If you can scan the QR code, but I think one of my colleagues, Salma, will also be putting the link in the chat so that you have access to that. You have until Friday. For some of us, tomorrow is a holiday, and so you have an extra day in case you want to complete it by then, so that you can get the CE and the PEs, depending on which one you need. But please make sure that you complete it by the date so that you have the adequate credit. And then should you need more information, this is our contact information for questions around PaCE. And if you have not already done so, please sign up for e-messaging services. And the link is on here. Thank you for those that are still with us. Unfortunately, we're not able to answer any questions, I think. Maybe someone did in the chat, but thank you. I will stop sharing my presentation.